Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
My dog went flying through the air over the tree, and I don't know how it did it.
Okay.
Deep in Bigfoot territory. Episode 11, The Siege of Honobia. This is a Squatch Mafia documentary. Welcome to this episode of Bigfoot territory. Today we are going to look at one of the most fascinating and notorious incidents in modern-day Bigfoot lore. The so-called Siege of Honobia, a series of events that took place in rural Oklahoma over 20 years ago, is one of the most shocking and violent of all Bigfoot tales, and was often described as a modern-day Ape Canyon incident. Let's travel into the depth of the Ouachita National Forest, deep in Bigfoot territory, and listen to this fascinating story. These incidents took place at a rural farmstead outside of Honobia, Oklahoma, in January of 2000. Honobia is an unincorporated community at the western border of LaFleur County, a region that had been haunted with Bigfoot tales since 1855. The last widely documented series of events from Oklahoma that happened before the late 90s comes from 1971, as a tall, hairy hominid creature raided dozens of chicken coops at farms near El Reno. Various newspaper articles were published about this strange series of incidents. The community of Honobia is situated in the Ouachita National Forest, at the foothills of the Ozark Mountains, places that themselves are often mentioned in Bigfoot lore. Additionally, the region is not too far from other Bigfoot hotspots like the village of Falk in the swamps of Arkansas or the Big Thicket at the eastern Texas border. The region surrounding Honobia consists of vast woodlands and wilderness, covering many square miles. The area had been unpopulated for centuries. In 1850, after a series of massive ethnic cleansings known as the Trail of Tears, the Choctaw Indians, who were pushed into this remote region, were the first to settle here. Other tribes that were deported into this remote wilderness were Cherokee, Seminole, and Muskogee Indians. In 1914, a post office was opened, which officially marked the founding of Honobia. Today, most of the 150 inhabitants of the community are members of the Choctaw First Nation. Throughout its entire history, Honobia was and remains a remote and isolated settlement in the Ouachita National Forest. Somewhere around early or mid-1997, two brothers by the names of Tim and Mike Humphrey bought a property outside of Honobia, together with their wives and kids. The property basically consisted of an old farmhouse and sheds. The land was mostly wilderness and forests. The brothers planned to use the vast property for extensive deer hunting. After a few years, in fall of 1999, a series of strange and violent events began, which later became famous in the Bigfoot world as the Siege of Honobia. The brothers and their families already had heard odd screams and howls from the forests on the property at night in the months and years prior to the events. Also, one of the brothers reported that he saw strange figures in the forests already years earlier. But the situation became more threatening from fall 1999 on, and culminated into several violent nights in January of 2000. On one morning in fall of 1999, the brothers realized that the carcasses of 5 deer that they had stored in a shed at the property had disappeared. The event already was strange, because there were no wheel tracks around the shed, and it seemed unlikely that poachers carried 5 deer away without using a truck or a car. But obviously poachers, who got aware of the shed of the brothers, were the most logical explanation for the disappeared deer. But this was just the beginning. In the next weeks, over 30 chickens were stolen by an unseen nocturnal thief from their coops, until the last chickens on the property had disappeared. At that point, the brothers already realized that ordinary poachers or predators most likely were not responsible for the strange and continuous series of stolen farm animals. So the Humphreys began to install various light barriers on their property, in hope to scare the nocturnal predator away. But that was not exactly what happened. Only a few nights after the installation of the light barriers, one of the brothers was awakened in the middle of the night by loud hammering against the front door of the house. As he opened the door, no one was to be seen. The man, unsure if he had dreamed the strange noise, went back into bed. But the noises continued in the following nights, as all family members were awoken by the nightly pounding and hammering against the front door and walls of the building. Other strange occurrences happened in the next days and weeks at the property and in the surrounding forests. The kids of the families stated that they saw strange figures at the tree line, staring at them. They also stated that large but unseen animals growled at them from the bushes and the tree lines around the property. It was also noted that the dogs of the family refused to enter certain forest trails on the property and acted strange, as if they were in fear on some parts of the property. Around that time, another noteworthy incident happened in the community of Honobia. One evening, a community member, an elderly woman in her 60s, disappeared without a trace in the forests just down the road from the Humphreys farm. Although the police searched for the woman for weeks, she was never seen again. In one of these nights in late fall of 1999, a new stage of terror was reached at the Humphreys property. In the middle of the night, large stones and rocks were thrown at the walls and the roof of the house of the families. The family members, especially the wives and kids, were terrified and unable to sleep for weeks. Also, strange howls, chattering, and screams could be heard from the tree lines around the house. The nocturnal screams and rock throws became a disturbing routine at the farm. The next event that shocked and terrified the families happened a few days after the first nightly rock throws. At one evening, the 3-year-old daughter of one of the brothers was screaming and crying in shock in her room. As the parents entered the child's room, the daughter claimed that a large and ugly gorilla was standing in front of her window and stared at her. A few evenings later, as one of the mothers also saw a large ape-like creature staring at her through one of the windows, the panic on the farm climbed to new heights. The families decided that the property was no longer a safe place and that the women and children had to leave the farm. Only the men stayed at the property while the women and children moved to a nearby community. But there are 2 more incidents that involved threatening behavior against females at the property. On one afternoon, the brother's sister, with her 2 kids, visited the farm of her brothers outside of Honobia. As she left the car to open the main gate of the property, 3 large, hair-covered man-like creatures stepped out of the bushes, growling at the woman and the kids in the back of the car. As the creatures stepped towards the woman, she jumped back into the car and rushed to the farmhouse. As one of the Humphrey brothers opened the door, the woman and 2 children were in shock, pale as ghosts and terrified. They were crying and in panic, talking about monsters that had tried to attack them at the farm gate. As the brothers, armed with assault rifles, went out to search for the creatures, nothing could be seen. A similar event happened a few weeks later, as the brother's niece was also stalked and attacked at the main gate of the farm. At this incident, shots were fired for the first time at the property, as the brothers started to shoot at the tree line, after her crying and fear-shaken niece had entered the house and told them about the attack. The niece also spoke of monsters, and described the attackers as multiple large, hair-covered creatures that reminded her of upright walking gorillas or Neanderthals. The next night, the events fully escalated at the property. As one of the brothers saw one of the creatures staring through a window into the house, he grabbed his assault rifle and ran outside. He saw the creature running over the yard, towards the tree line. He immediately fired multiple shots at the creature, hitting it 3 times. The creature, hit by multiple bullets, crumbled and fell to the ground. After it got up again and tried to continue sprinting towards the tree line, it fell once more and stopped moving. The 2 brothers rushed out of the house into the yard to investigate the shot creature. At that moment, multiple creatures jumped out of the tree line in front of the men, screaming with ear-splitting noise and throwing rocks at the brothers. The 2 men fired some shots but decided it would be best to retreat into the house, as at least 5 or 6 of the ape men-like creatures threw rocks at them and ran towards the brothers. As the men retreated, they saw 2 of the Bigfoot-like figures carrying the shot creature away into the forest. What followed at the property that night was a shootout that lasted for hours, as several of the ape men attacked and damaged the house, destroying nearly all windows with rock throws, and tried to enter the house several times. At the beginning of dawn, the creatures disappeared again into the forests. Multiple witnesses stated that they saw the blood on the ground at the spot the creature was shot. Interestingly, a statement by an unidentified logger is documented for that evening. The man claimed that he saw two Bigfoots, carrying a third one who seemed to be dead or wounded, through the forest. The brothers later reported that the following nights were much more dangerous than the months before, because the creatures now obviously tried to get hold of the brothers or to enter the house. They stated that a large gorilla-looking creature stepped into the yard in front of the house several times and tried to lure them into the open. The next episode of the Siege of Honobia is highly disputed, because in late January, the brothers brought another party for documentation onto the property, namely the BFRO, the Bigfoot Field Research Organization. According to the first BFRO reports, the events on the farm were highly interesting, and they tried to convince the brothers to sell the property to the BFRO for further research. According to the brothers, none of this is true. They have stated several times that the BFRO researchers freaked out and panicked on the first night on the farm, and that the brothers had to convince them to stay for a few more days before the researchers left the scene as fast as possible. In the next weeks, the BFRO made the story about a rural farm in Oklahoma that was attacked by a clan of Bigfoots, public, and the events gained some notoriety in the Bigfoot scene of the early 2000s. Later, the brothers reported in multiple interviews that, after the public reports, people they suggested to be government agents came to the property to ask questions about the events. The Humphreys also stated that their phones were manipulated after these visits, and they were convinced that somebody was surveilling their communication via phone. After the BFRO had made the events public, various researchers and filmmakers came to the small community, often to get hold of the Humphrey brothers. But it seems that the Humphreys had left the area in early 2000. Their current whereabouts are unknown. Legend has it that they finally fled their home in the middle of the night, leaving most of their belongings, including their furniture and a full refrigerator, behind. Various factors make the Siege of Honobia an outstanding tale among many other outstanding tales in Bigfoot lore. The point that multiple people encountered the creatures and their violent behavior is remarkable. The level of aggression and the partly strategic nature of the attacks are also noteworthy. Furthermore, the fact that multiple other community members, who were not part of the Humphrey family, witnessed certain parts of the events lends credibility to the general story of the family. What's your opinion on the Siege of Honobia and cryptids in Oklahoma? Let me know in the comments section. Hit the like button if you have enjoyed this episode of Bigfoot Territory. Subscribe to the Squatch Mafia channel at YouTube for more videos on Bigfoot and Sasquatch. Check out Squatch Mafia at Patreon and TikTok for extra content. Thank you for watching.